There are so many questions that humans have about this seemingly intangible idea of a creator, or God, or of a source that is beyond your imagination, yet that's one that somehow you're directly connected to. It's also very difficult for you to truly believe that there is an entourage, if you want to call it that, or a group around each of you all the time. This intangible spiritual group knows your name, and not the name you have now. The name is of a soul group. The name is bigger even than you can imagine. The name itself exists in light, and the name is not an identifier, but rather a descriptor of magnificence. It is patterned and speaks of your soul group in this galaxy that belongs to Earth. If I could summarize all of this, let me again say that God knows you, and this has to be either fully realized or somehow trained into a human being. The reason for this is common and obvious, and I will go into this yet again. Humans have the perception that everything around them that exhibits any intelligence will echo a human's intelligence. When you have a pet, and of course the pet cannot understand your language, you still talk to them as though they understand everything. You project your humanism and emotion on the animal to communicate, even though the animal has no idea what you're saying or doing. However, that animal can feel the love that you have, since love is universal. Human consciousness is not. In reference to the creative source, I'll call this issue the God in a box syndrome. And the box is a human box that you perceive God exists within. The human projects everything that is human nature onto the Almighty. God is then portrayed simply as a superhuman, but with the same dysfunctions as humans: anger, disappointment, judgment, and punishment. I've told you that every civilization on this planet has done the same thing yours has done. And you are civilization number 5. You are also the civilization that would be present during the precision of the equinoxes in 2012. And would have the ability to see the shift. Other civilizations before yours have gone through similar things. We don't speak much of that yet because most of humanity still doesn't believe it. You are told that civilization is only 6,000 or 7,000 years old. I've told you that you've been here for more than 50 to 60,000 years. Would it shock you if I told you that some of the inventions you have, the basic ones, such as electricity, were present early in your civilization, but also in the civilization before yours? The common sense reason is that electricity is easily discoverable. Nature produces it, and anyone watching and looking and interested with an inquiring mind can discover how to eventually create it. So, you're not the first. And it leads to things which I'll mention in just a moment. However, the civilizations before yours also did the same thing with God in a box. Communication is interesting with humanity. It has always been paramount with you, staying in touch. Let's talk only about your current civilization and what happened very early. It's so interesting that you feel you're so technical right now. Actually, your technology is very high compared to your past. However, your ancestors also had high tech in their own way. What if I told you that long before the telegraph or the radio or the telephone, you had a system of communication at the speed of light, but only about 20 miles at a time? You may laugh, but it's true. Your ancestors did it. All they had to do was climb a mountain and get smoke signals to the next mountain. That's communication at the speed of light, 20 miles at a time. One mountain group would talk to another, that would talk to another, that would talk to another. The language was perhaps a little inelegant, but it was very fast communication. It was needed, figured out, and used for thousands of years. The continuous stream of inventors has always been instant communication. In a very early time, if you wanted to send a message to a family member in a town or a village that was far away, the system was to write a note, get on an animal of some kind, and ride the animal to the next town. That eventually became the mail. Today you laugh at how slow that might have been. Sometimes you would say hello in the letter, and 3 weeks later, you get a hello back. That was as good as it got. In about the 1700s, in your civilization, along came a system of the telegraph, where you could then send a message through code at long distances. 100 years later, this led to the invention of radio, and then the invention suddenly came quickly, and you could communicate to another continent in real time. Some thought that that was as good as it was going to get, and they said so in publications of the day. Next, you did it with pictures, then with video, and now the world is yours through simple devices you carry in your pocket. If someone has the correct equipment on the other side of your pocket device transmission, you could talk to the planet, and they could hear all of you at once. The secret, of course, is all of you having the correct equipment. It's interesting, isn't it? That communication to God was always linked to your current human abilities and invention. In an older energy, when nobody could dream of instant communication with everyone else, you had to approach God in a limited way. Someone else with training and awareness was needed, and you talked to them, and they talked to God. In addition, it was like the smoke signals, in that there weren't many words, but this whole idea is centuries old, but still exists today. So, you limited the receiving equipment of God to exactly what you were able to do or imagine as a human. It was slow, not very clear, and someone else had to go, ride somewhere else to deliver your message. Do you see a bias? Even today, you haven't extrapolated your new technology improvement on your God box. Did you realize that? You're still sending letters. Now many might say, well, wait a minute, that's not true. I can pray and I know God hears me. That is so. But you've always felt it was one way because you never felt that God could hear you enough to give you an answer immediately. The perception was that God never had the equipment because you never did. How quaint of you. This continues even today. There's no technology high enough to have a real-time communication with Spirit or God where you could have a back and forth message at the speed of light. It simply is not acceptable thought. Don't you find this odd when humans can do it between themselves? Does that make you wonder what the real technology of God might be? One that has no bearing on what humans have invented or can imagine. Even today, most of humanity still has to go through some kind of interloper that translate your message. Sometimes it goes through an existing living human, and sometimes it's through a prophet who is no longer alive. But it's still God in a box. Somehow, God simply can't be next to you. Only the human facsimiles can. And it gets even more dysfunctional than that, because this process is often accompanied with steps of an achievement or funding in order for you to receive your message. Humanity still has no widespread perception of an immediate connection to the creative source. By the way, that's what's coming next. With human evolution, of consciousness. All of this seeming dysfunction is truly understandable because this is the only model of communication you have. That model is yourself and humanity in general. So if there's an almighty God somewhere, the logical perception is that to get to this source, you must do the same kinds of things you might have to do if you needed to get to any world leader. There might be all manner of steps, procedures, and activities that you do in order to achieve that communication. And all of those would be a mirror of what you do as humans, with humans. You've got all the equipment already inside you for instant communication with the creative source of the universe, God. You had this equipment even when you were doing smoke signals and sending letters with express riders on horses. You had this stellar speed of light thought communication at the very beginning of your civilization. But you didn't understand this because you always applied the process of prayers to God to the process that you communicate together. What's interesting is that you never updated your God box. Even today, for most of humanity, you are taught that it is difficult to speak directly to the Creator. One person even reported, the internet is just a little too high tech for God. My message is this. You have always had 100% speed of consciousness connection to the creative source. The reason, the logic, it's because the creative source knows you and your soul. The Creator made you in the image of love. You are not a stranger to God. Here's another interesting thing about how humans have handled their mythology. If indeed a mythological God can hear or see you, then be careful, for you will also be judged for what is heard. Do you see any bias in this? No matter who you were as a child, Santa Claus could hear all of the requests at the same time worldwide. However, you better be good or you don't get a present. See where you go with this? Here is God in a box for you. Even if humans believe they can communicate with God, there's still the question, what does God think about what I said or did? Is it possible that spirit can be angry or judgmental? Anger? The answer is no. That is a low consciousness human emotion. Judgment? No. That is a human nature reaction. God in a box is God in your box. Understand how this has worked? Kryon tells us that spirit has compassion. Isn't that a human emotion? No. That is a creator attribute that you get by being a human. Listen, love, compassion, benevolence, and the coherence of putting things together are all attributes given to you from the creative source. Humor is also from the creative source. The creativity of music, the idea of harmonies causing emotional effects and sending you into coherence is right from the creative source. These attributes represent things given to you in light that you have free choice to use or not. They are then balanced with the things you create as a human in the darkness. That is the definition of duality. It is the human being's perception of where to place their importance within their own consciousness. It's the balance of light and dark in your world. But make no mistake, what you consider as the emotions of love and compassion are right from the Creator. So, what's next? Once you get to a place where you realize you don't have to climb stairs or go through someone else to get to the original creative source of the universe, it's far easier than you think to proceed with great communication. First, do you really believe all this? If so, you can sit in your chair, know you are a magnificent, magnificent creature, created in the image of love, and say, "Dear Spirit, I know you are with me. Dear Spirit, I know you are here. Dear Spirit, I expect benevolent things in my life because that is the plan you have allowed for me." And once you get to that stage, you simply have thrown the switch that was always there. From now on, you begin to get real communication and results. But here's where it also gets difficult. They say that I'm wrong. I've tried this and nothing has happened. It doesn't work. I wish I could take you by the hand and lead you to higher consciousness, but I can't. It must be on your own free choice. And how you do it is important. You see, the switch you throw isn't done with your linear mind. It's done with your aware, conscious mind. It's done with faith and understanding, patience and trust in God. Many just try it and never understand that it is a full consciousness experience and not a "I'll try it" experience. However, unless you actually begin to understand and love yourself, nothing much is going to happen. More on that in a moment. You are not in a box either. Let us say, for instance, you are a healer, and for so many years you've had the gifts and the tools of healing. Let's say for the past years, there's been some frustration because these past gifts either don't work all the time, or they work in ways that you haven't seen before, or you feel you cannot control them. For any of these situations, it would be because these gifts are using advanced energy that most humans, they just don't have. Do you know how to work with this? Most do not. Due to the God in the box bias, it even frustrated the shamans of the old world that sometimes the healings occurred and sometimes they didn't. This would even get them in trouble because of those around them expecting linearity in healing. They expected the linearity that happens when you cook a meal or make something. They expected a paradigm that is far different from what a healer has. Good communication with spirit creates good results in your life, but it must be non-linear communication that creates it. What is that really? It's a trust me paradigm. Can you explain love? Can you explain the compassion of God? These concepts are totally out of linear thinking, yet you can use them and trust them. Most of you are attempting to work with non-linear energy in a linear world, and it's tough. It's tough because thinking in a linear way is an actual habit of reality. If you still think in a linear way about God, your efforts to really communicate will be limited. There's a metaphor coming. Imagine you want to call God on your cell phone. Common sense says, hold it high and get a better signal. But instead, you dig a hole and stand in it, since you don't understand the technology, and people you trust have told you that you must be grounded to talk with God. You see? That limits the cell signal, but it's old logic. That's a very simple example of old thinking about a new paradigm. You have an entourage around you, and every single one of those in the entourage loves you dearly. However, they continue to watch you flounder in many of these things because in some ways, you still have the bias of God in a box. Even if you believe you can communicate instantly, you still don't think God cares enough to work with you on the issue. Free choice always allows you to continue this all your life. They say, I'm fine. I know what I'm doing with spirit. Don't tell me that I'm still biased in linearity. Really? How do you think about yourself? Do you feel magnificent, or are there some real issues with personal things that you can't shake? Your healing work with others and your own issues will absolutely be affected by how you feel about yourself, period. That's a fairly new attribute that comes with advanced energy. Many of you might go a lifetime or decades with an entourage around you, begging you to just ask and work things out because you are in communication and the line is open. However, you can't go any further than the true amount you can love yourself. There's a new reality I want to tell you about. You really have only gone to first base, as they say. You just threw the switch and now you can talk. But what if God then talks in another language? Actually, you see that it's not a language at all, but a consciousness that needs to be interpreted. What if you need to put some things together that you never thought about to make these communications better? Imagine another metaphor. You're now being asked to help design your gifts. This means the healer as well as the non-healer. The gifts are the tools for good spiritual communication for every human on the planet. God in a box can't work now, since that is a human construct. Old habits of thinking about how things work cannot be in your mind. You have to think outside of the box now to understand how to do these things. So now you must design or construct something that has your stamp on it. After all, multi-dimensional things require the energy of consciousness, not stair climbing or bead counting. So let's say the pieces and parts of what you must create all land in your lap so you can design them. Imagine the cook somehow getting all the ingredients falling out of the sky, and there they are, with all those parts of the meal around them. But the frustration is that the cook does not recognize any of the new ingredients. They don't make sense. Yet, the cook is a good one. But suddenly somebody says, "Are the ingredients multidimensional?" The answer is yes. They must be. That's why I don't recognize them. Then why don't you just use your intuition and put them together without using the linearity of the experience of past cooking or having to understand every piece and part? The answer? I can do that. Now I get it. So, even though the ingredients that go into the potential meal are a mystery in a linear way, it's okay. Because now, when you add the intuition and magic of an advanced consciousness that says, I don't have to understand things in the way I used to in order to be able to create magnificent things in my life, the meal starts to cook itself. What guidelines did the master painter follow on a blank canvas? What sounds did the master composer hear when he wrote the symphony? See, it all came through intuition. That metaphoric meal you cook will be more nourishing than anything you ever made before. But you never thought about cooking those odd, non-linear ingredients, did you? You never thought you were in control enough to design the pieces and parts of the gifts you have, did you? You never thought you were worthy of it, did you? Perhaps, just perhaps, you are still entertaining the habits of God in a box. Again, the more you love yourself and trust in your intuitive self, the clearer the communication. Not too long ago, Kryon gave a message that if you are a healer or you have any kind of gifts of spirit, they're going to increase. We were told that in this new light-dark relationship, suddenly you're going to find yourself with an increased potential. You may see things you never expected or never had seen before. Results in your work may double, triple, or even more. Did it ever occur to you how this was going to happen? Did you ever think you might actually be involved in the new design of the gifts? Perhaps you just thought they would appear and work. Not a chance. Oh, they will appear all right, but they will be uncontrollable for you. They will just fly around and come out at any time they want. Frustrating? Yes. That's what will happen unless you understood the beauty of the design that you have around you and how you are being asked to work with the new tools in ways you never did before, with no linearity, with nothing anyone has ever told you before. And they say, okay, you've got my attention. I'm a healer. Give me something practical. How do I design it? How do I cook the meal? You have open communication with an entourage that knows your name and who sits there when you're awake or asleep looking at you. I want you to have communication right now, like so. Dear entourage, dear spirit, thank you for these marvelous gifts. I now realize that it's time for me to help design the improvement since they have my name on them. Give me the intuition and the energy I now believe in, which helps me to know what to do with them. Do this with me in order to suppress the things that need suppressing and release the things that need releasing. Let me have the patience for the timing of it. Let me do all of these things in love and compassion. Now, repeat this as often as it takes for you to believe it. It actually only really takes one verbalization. However, repeating it lets the linear part of you hear it and believe it. After a while, the process then becomes this. You start to get the intuition you need, and you start expecting the results. Then things start to work. Next, you want some more. Then you start expecting more. It's a process like exercising a muscle. So you practice and practice, and soon you realize that with the help of the entourage around you, it is indeed working. Lightworkers, listen. Spirit knows you so well. However, many of you are sitting in this group or listening to these words, and I want you to know that there is a custom pattern for each of you to help you drop your fear and to help you get control of your biology. All of these things have your name on them. What this means is that this process is not a generic take a pill experience. It's customized for your own consciousness and energy. All this happens through communication. It's not too much for spirit to listen to millions at the same time. That's the spectacular energy of the consciousness of God. But it's also possible for spirit to work individually with millions at the same time for a solution, and to create synchronicity that is outside of luck and what you think is possible. Don't limit what you think is possible just because you don't believe you are in touch to a high degree. You are. That's the invitation. The invitation is to begin to understand all of this. If you think God is too far away to hear you, there's going to be an issue. That's God in a human box. However, if you think you can whisper and be heard and loved by the eternal creative source, then you're on the right track. You see, it's not linear, is it? It's not the physics you've been taught, is it? It's not the doctrine of spirituality on earth that you have been taught, is it? What if, just what if, God is bigger than anything you were ever taught? What if I'm correct and you are indeed magnificent in the eyes of God? Are you getting this? Ponder this message in a way that allows for the truth to appear to you individually, and understand that this is a personal and customized energy just for your life.